Hello and welcome to another 30-Minute Thursday. My name is Amit. It is 2 p.m. in the beautiful yet gloomy Pacific Northwest. We are live on Facebook. I hope everybody's doing great. Hope you guys are staying safe, staying healthy, staying sane, and ready for yet another weekend and another 30-Minute Thursday. Here we are together again. What can I tell you? It is rocky out there. I'm going to just jump right in and say that Consumer Price Index information came out today. The Consumer Price Index is basically a measure on the cost of consumer goods, basically. So anything from food, energy like gas, heating, your food, my steaks, my bourbon, to clothing, to movies, to everything under the umbrella of what we pay for as consumers, everything is up. And we all know this. But when the government tells you their numbers, their gauge for it, it kind of solidifies and captures the attention, not just of the individual, but also of the markets that are operating, the economic markets, whether it's the stock market, the bond market, mortgage rate market, and so forth. So inflation numbers, the Consumer Price Index came out today. It comes out every month. And when the number for January came out, that's what happened today, the number for January a year ago fell off the 12-month rolling average. It's a 12-month rolling average. So when the new month comes on, the month from a year ago falls off. So it just kind of rolls forward. So we had a huge increase, and the rate of inflation year over year in the United States at this moment is 7.5%. That's 7.5%. To put that into context, our Federal Reserve Board wants to keep the rate of inflation at 2% or lower. They have failed miserably at that task. There's no other way to say it. There's no way to mince those words. Their mandate is 2%. That's a self-imposed mandate. That's what the standard that they held for themselves, and they've dropped the ball. By comparison, other countries, the UK is at 5.4% inflation year over year. France is somewhere around 2.9%. We are by far, Mexico is at 7.1%. We are by far the highest rate of inflation of all the countries in our sphere of influence, comparable nations, developed nations, however you want to describe it. We are by far the highest rate of inflation year over year. And that's going to continue until the Federal Reserve Board gets its arms around this problem, until the U.S. government starts to deal with fiscal policy and starts to behave more responsibly. I'm not a political person when it comes to these broadcasts and when it comes to these conversations, but I'm an honest person no matter what. And inflation is a factor of government spending, which is fiscal policy, and the Federal Reserve Board, which is monetary policy. And those two gigantic institutions, those two behemoths, have got to get their act together and start to do things to bring this down. And they know what to do. They just don't want to do it because it's painful and it's going to cause pain and it's going to make them wildly unpopular with the electorate. But how popular do you feel right now when things are at a rate of inflation 7.5% higher than they were this time last year and rising? So it's not a great situation. And on top of that, it impacts the mortgage industry very, very directly. I've spoken about this so many times, I feel like a bit of a broken record. But let me just tell you, when inflation goes up, interest rates have to go up as well. Short-term interest rates as well as long-term interest rates. The interest rates that I generate or that I quote you when we're doing a mortgage, those are long-term interest rates. Long-term interest hates more than anything else, like a vampire to sunlight, hates inflation. The reason that they hate inflation is because inflation robs you of your buying power. We've said it time and again, a dollar doesn't go as far as it used to, and that's been the case forever and ever. But it's usually a small change from what it could buy to what it can buy. Now it's a really big change. And if you're on a fixed income, think about retirees. They're on a fixed income. They're getting monthly income from either Social Security or pension or their IRA, 401k, a combination of all of the above, maybe something else as well. But if you're on a fixed income, which is what mortgage yields are, mortgage bonds, mortgage interest rates generate a fixed income to the person or the entity that holds them, If you're on a fixed income and all of a sudden the rate of inflation skyrockets, you can't buy as much as you could. It's just that simple. It's basic economics. And as a result of that, investors in fixed income commodities or fixed income investments like mortgage bonds are going to insist on higher interest rates in the future, in the immediate future, in order to deal with the lack of buying power or the loss of buying power that they're experiencing in their investments. And that's what's happening right now. In fact, today, the Universal Mortgage-Backed Securities, which is the instrument basically that I create when I make a mortgage origination for you guys, whether it's a refi or a purchase, that is sold in the open market. And the price of that instrument dropped significantly today. Over the course of the day, once the announcement came out on the Consumer Price Index showing that the rate of inflation had increased as much as it has, the mortgage-backed securities are down 84 basis points. That is a huge drop. Just to give you an idea of what that really means, back in the day, a year ago, if mortgage bonds moved by 8 basis points, that was considered a pretty big day. If they moved by double-digit basis points, that was considered a really big day. 80 basis points, it's almost 1 full percentage point. It's huge. That doesn't necessarily mean that your interest rate on an unlocked mortgage is going up by 1%, but what it does mean is that the markets are not happy, and the markets dictate the price. It's just that simple. And so as they continue to be unhappy, interest rates are going to continue to go up. In fact, today, in the middle of the day, about an hour ago, maybe an hour and a half ago, I received an email from my corporate interest rate desk basically saying that, hey, the market has gotten so bad that the rates that we were quoting earlier this morning are no longer valid. We have a reprice for the worse, meaning that interest rates have changed. And your clients now, if they haven't locked in, they're going to have a different interest rate environment. And that's not a better interest rate environment. That is a worse interest rate environment. So this is kind of the nature of this unchecked inflation. Now, the Fed has told us, the Federal Reserve Board has told us that they're going to start dealing with this more aggressively and more actively. And everyone I speak to is saying, hey, I heard that the Fed's going to increase interest rates. We want to get our stuff taken care of in advance of that. My saying is, bring it on already. Stop dithering and start acting. Federal Reserve Board, start doing what you said you're going to do. I want to see the Fed raise short-term interest rates. You guys want to see the Fed raise short-term interest rates. I know it's counterintuitive. I know that's weird. But when the Fed raises short-term interest rates, that's the stuff on your credit cards. That's the stuff on your home equity line of credit. That's the stuff possibly that's going to impact your car loans and other things like that that aren't locked in. When they do that, what that signals to the market is that they're actually serious now about curbing inflation. And once they get their arms around inflation, then the long-term interest rates, the mortgage interest rates, will start to come down. Until that time, we're going to get whipsawed by this market. It's just that simple. Until the Fed actually starts doing what they said that they were going to do, until they start raising those short-term interest rates and pulling money out of this economy, and making it more difficult for you and for me to finance our consumer good purchases, our credit card balances, our other debt, basically, until they start to make money more expensive so that inflation comes down. And until inflation really does come down, this is going to be the case. We're going to see higher and higher mortgage interest rates. We're going to see more uncertainty in the mortgage markets. It's going to be more expensive to finance your home purchase. It's just that simple. I'm in this mess as well, guys. No holds barred here. First of all, my livelihood is dependent on being able to close mortgage loans for my clients. And the more expensive that becomes, the less people want to do business. It's just that simple across the board. Me, my colleagues, my rivals, we're all in the same boat here. So this has a direct impact on my compensation, has a direct impact on my income, and on my overall joie de vivre, my overall joy of life, because I don't want to relay to people, hey, remember that interest rate that we didn't lock in last week? Well, now it's 1/4 of a point or 3/8 of a point higher. That's not a fun conversation to have. So it is just the nature of things. But beyond that, personally, I'm also shopping for homes. I mean, I've told you this before. I'm looking for investment homes. I'm looking for second homes. I'm looking for to just buy more real estate. And my cost is going to go up as well as anybody else's cost. I'm subject to the same rate environment as the rest of you guys. Just because I'm with the DJ doesn't mean I get any special consideration when it comes to interest rates. So I have pressure. I feel the same thing my clients feel. And I tell you, it's a terrible feeling. It's really unsettling to see what's going on here, not just in the interest rates, but on consumer prices. I drive, which means I fill up my car with gas just like you guys do. I eat a lot. I eat a lot of steak. I drink a fair amount of bourbon. And all those things go up in price as inflation pressures continue to rise. And we're all kind of feeling that squeeze. And here's the bad news. We're going to feel more. We're going to get squeezed even more as this happens. I don't mean to say this in a joking way. I certainly don't take any pleasure in it, but I wouldn't be good at my job and I wouldn't be doing y'all a service if I sugarcoated things. For the immediate future, this is going to continue. And I say this for two reasons. Number one, the Fed still needs to act, right? They've been talking, they've been preparing the markets. The Fed is in a very unenviable position. They want or need to deal with this inflationary pressure, but at the same time, if they do things too quickly and too aggressively and too just violently in one direction, they're going to freak out the markets. And they've already started to do that. If you guys monitor your stocks, if you monitor your 401k or your IRA, you're already aware of the volatility. This is not anything new. It's going to get worse until it gets better. The markets do not like uncertainty, and they do not like seeing these things kind of undone or half done. So when the Fed actually starts doing it, until that time, it's going to be bumpy. And even after that, it's going to be bumpy because our economy is massive and our markets are massive. I equate this to comparing it between a speedboat and a big cargo container ship. The speedboat, man, you move that thing around the lake. It's awesome. It's fun. You can ski behind it. You can wakeboard behind it. It turns quickly. It moves around. That's great. You try to do the same thing with one of those big ocean-going container ships, you're going to capsize the boat. You can't turn it that fast. Our economy is the big ocean-going container ship. It can't turn that fast. Even if you try to throw everything at it, the opposite impact is going to happen. You're going to capsize the boat. You're going to make it even worse. So they have to take this slowly. They have to take it in measured tones. And they have to course correct and see what happens. Course correct and see what happens. Course correct and see what happens. And kind of apply or disapply as necessary, which means that it's going to be a year like this, maybe even a little bit longer. For those of us who are old enough to remember the late 1990s and the early 2000s, or even older like me, the late 1970s, early 1980s, it takes a while. I'm talking about a year to 2 years of actually putting forth the effort and taking the pain and bringing down the rate of inflation in order to see the economy stabilize and in order to see these long-term interest rates come back to a level where we have grown accustomed to them. Now, I'll be honest with you. I'm always honest with you. Interest rates are still great. That's the secret of all this. By historical comparisons, interest rates are still really, really good. When I started in the business in 2001, we were already in a course correction from 1999 and the year 2000. We had already turned the corner on inflation, and interest rates were at 6.5%, on their way to like 5.75, 5.5% and lower. So I've already seen this once before in my professional career, but it took about a year and a half for all of those Fed Reserve Board actions to actually sink in and take effect in the economy. But still, when I started 20 years ago, the interest rates were significantly higher than they are now. Even as the rates right now are going up, they're still much, much, much lower than they were 20 years ago. And even severely lower than they were 40 years ago when this happened again in the late 1970s, early 1980s. At that time, the interest rates were at 18% on a 30-year fixed. So guys, this is nothing. It's a tempest in a teacup. It's not huge. in the big scheme of things, but it is massive to my clients. It is massive to me to have to share news from day to day or from week to week, month to month for all my pre-approved clients who are out there still looking for homes. And now they find out that their interest rate's gone up by 1% from when we started our conversation. That's really painful. And for that, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You're sorry. We're all kind of feeling the same thing. I just wish that there was a better way to convey that information and a bigger spoonful of sugar than what I have to offer. But I will tell you that historically speaking, once the Fed has gotten their arms around the inflationary pressures, the interest rates on mortgages have come down, and that has sparked huge refinance opportunities. And I'm hoping that history does repeat itself and that we'll see in a year and a half, sometime in mid-2023 or whenever it is, sooner than later ideally, that we'll see this correction take root and that we'll have an opportunity to refinance everybody whose mortgage we're closing right now at a rate that's higher than we'd like it to be. I'm optimistic that in a year or 18 months or 24 months, somewhere in there, we're going to see a really nice return to these lower interest rates and an opportunity to do a refi. So what does that mean to my real estate partners and to our clients? A few things. Let me check my time here. Okay, we're good. So a few things here. First of all, real estate partners, really, really important. If you work with me, you've already gotten this. If you don't work with me, make sure you get this from your referral partners, from your mortgage professionals. Check on your pre-approved clients. Make sure that they're still pre-approved. If they were really skinny, if they were really tight on margins, if they were really, pushing to get pre-approved and they had like this much room, that room may have evaporated. That margin of error may be gone now because the rates have gone up. Their monthly estimated housing payment will have gone up as well, and they may no longer qualify. So before you go out and get them involved with the property, before you start showing homes again, before you start writing offers again, and what have you, make sure either call your current loan officer or call me if you don't have a mortgage lender, but make sure that your clients are still pre-approved because things change, and things have changed drastically in the last 3 months. That's number one. Number two, for the clients, don't load up too much cost in your mortgage right now. I know it's tempting. I know you're going to look at your rate right now and you're going to say, well, what if I buy down the interest rate? Buy down the interest rate means basically I bring in more money out of pocket today to buy an interest rate that's lower. So let's just say the interest rate is 4%, which it isn't, but it's coming close right now. Let's just say the interest rate is 4% and you want to buy that down. Typically, it's going to come down by about 1/4% to 0.375 or 3/8% with 1% of the loan amount as buy down. So if you're on a $500,000 mortgage, it would cost you $5,000 in one-time fees to buy down that interest rate. Typically what I've seen, and everything's different, so this is just a broad brushstroke. It's not me quoting rates or quoting your rate or anything like that, but typically 1 point in discount or buy down fee is going to bring down that interest rate by 1/4%, maybe 3/8%. So if it's at 4 and you buy it down, maybe you'll see 3.75 or 3.625. And that might feel a lot better in here. But up here, it's not the right decision, and I'm going to tell you why. First of all, you have to see what the payment difference is on your mortgage every month from 4% to 3.75 or 3.625. It's not going to be as big a difference as you think it is, especially on a loan amount of $500,000 or even $1 million. It's not going to be a huge difference. So take that with a grain of salt. In fact, on a loan amount of $1 million, 1/4% or 3/8%, I should say 3/8% on $1 million loan translates to about $200 a month in monthly mortgage payment difference. So you're spending $5,000 to reduce your monthly payment by like $100 a month. That's a huge cost. And the way I advise people to look at it is divide the cost of that buy down, $5,000, by the savings, $100, and it's going to take you, easy math, 50 months to recoup that $5,000 out of pocket. I think that we're going to have a chance to refinance well before 5 years. I would say probably within 18 months, maybe 2 years, we're going to have a chance to refinance that mortgage. And so what I'm suggesting to my clients is don't load up a bunch of fees at the beginning of your transaction, at the beginning of your mortgage, into the cost of that mortgage. Because if we come back to it in a year and say, let's refinance, now you've got sunk cost. You've got an extra $5,000 in this example in sunk costs that are very hard to recover. You know, I could bring your rate down by 0.5% or 0.75% perhaps when it's time to refinance, maybe even more. But it's gonna be hard to recover that out-of-pocket initial $5,000 to buy down the rate. So my advice to my clients and to anybody who's willing to listen is bite the bullet right now. I know it's painful. Take the rate as it is. Don't spend a lot of money buying down the rate for the short term, because in the medium term, within a year, 18 months, maybe 2 years, assuming that the Fed gets their act together and that inflation comes down, we'll have a refinance opportunity. Now, if you don't believe that, if you think that the Fed is not going to get its act together and that that ship has sailed and this is the best we're going to do, then by all means, feel free to spend your money as you wish. I've just seen this twice before, two different cycles in the late 70s, early 80s, and in the late 1990s, early 2000s, and it's always worked the same way. So that's kind of my advice to both my real estate partners and my clients. Again, I'll repeat that, and then I'm going to have to cut short because I've got a few things going on today. But repeating the news for you, real estate clients, real estate partners, please call your mortgage lender. Call me. Let's talk about your pipeline. Let's talk about your pre-approved clients. Make sure that the ones that were really tight on their margins are still pre-approved, because things have changed. Costs have gone up, payments have gone up, and if they were really, really close to the margins and close to the edge of approvability, things might have changed. For my mortgage clients, I'm just going to share with you guys, I think we're going to refinance out of this in the next 18 months, maybe 2 years. I know it's painful to take a higher interest rate than what it was a year ago or even 4 months ago, but this is where we are. This is the market, and none of us can really control that. So my advice is take the short-term pain right now. I know it's gonna be a little bit difficult, but at the same time, there's gonna be an opportunity to refinance for the long term within a year, year and a half, 2 years, somewhere in there, hopefully. And once we do that, all of this will be behind us and it'll just be a bad memory. So that's the advice to the Federal Reserve Board. Not that they care to listen to me, and I hope they're not watching, because that's more scrutiny than I care to have. But to the Federal Reserve Board, let's get on with it. Start doing your job. Get your arms around this inflationary pressure, because not only is it impacting my income, my work, my clients' ability to finance a home purchase and everything else, but inflation is the worst tax there is. It's tax without representation in any capacity. It's the most regressive tax there is. The people who can afford it the least are getting hit the hardest by it, and there's no relief for them. When you're on a fixed income, when you're receiving, Social Security and pension income, or, whatever, you're living off your retirement funds and you're on a very limited income, and the price of food goes up the way it has, or the price of gas goes up, or the price of rent goes up, or anything else for that matter, and you have no other income, those people suffer the most. And that is so unfair. That is so criminal to do to people on fixed income at the lower end of the income range. It's just not right. Inflation is very, very devastating, and it is very unfair. It is tax without representation, truly is. So our government and our Federal Reserve Board, they've got to get their fiscal policy and their monetary policy. They got to get those houses in order, and they got to start doing the heavy lifting. Even though it's going to hurt, we got to get this under control, because there's no other way out. So I know it's not the most cheery. I put on my yellow shirt trying to be more cheery and more sunny and more rosy in my disposition. Let's not overlook the fact that interest rates are still lower than they've been historically in decades, if not longer. let's not overlook the fact that we still live in the best country on the planet. As far as I'm concerned, despite all of its shortcomings and mistakes, we still live in one of the best places on the planet. And not just that, but here in the Pacific Northwest, one of the most gorgeous places. So we've got lots of blessings. We've got lots of things to be optimistic about. Right now, short term, it's a little bit rocky. It's going to be even more rocky for a little while until we get through this, but we're going to get through it. We always do, and we'll see each other on the other side with more smiles and more laughter. So until then, I'm going to cut this short. We're pretty close. We're 25 minutes in. It's amazing how time flies when I ramble on. But until next time, I'm going to wish you guys a very happy weekend, a wonderful Valentine's Day, which is on Monday. I hope you guys embrace those who you love and enjoy a good Valentine's Day. And I will see you next Thursday right here, 2 p.m. Pacific time. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, stay sane, and keep smiling. It's going to be okay. Have a great day. Bye-bye.